casual, and I welcome people to unmute and ask Davis questions or jump in, and you can chat on the sidebar if you'd like as well. But I'm thinking maybe, 20, 30 minutes of just kind of casual conversation with you, Davis, and then, maybe we can get to a couple of questions and other folks joining. But, we were just sort of getting to it, and the reason I reached out to you and I wanted to bring you in is because, as you were saying, I mean, there is always good things that can come out of this, and one of these is, we get to have a virtual fireside chat with you, and it levels the playing field for those types of relationships. But at the same time, everybody here, I think, is to a degree starved by, socially. Like, we're not seeing as many people as we like. We're not doing the things we wanted to do or had planned. And selfishly, I was craving, more. I want to have these types of conversations, talk to people, be out in the world, see what's going on. And so, I know it's the same for my team, and for the people that are on, we've got, parents and people who are juggling the kids at home and work and other stresses that are, coming on. And so I just thought it would be like a breath of fresh air for my team, from, some of our clients, some of our friends to come in. And that's kind of why we're here. But just to give you a little bit of an introduction, which, like, my intro for you is like longer than my agenda, because you've done more and have more kind of accolades and merit badges than like anybody I know. But I was just saying, to Davis and joking, he's a pretty good zip liner. I actually had the chance to visit Davis in Utah at one point, and broke my hip in a couple places zip lining with him, which I'll share that story one-to-one some other time. But Davis is like, when we first met, I presented before him at the University of Pennsylvania, and I almost walked out the door after I spoke, and I thought, well, I'll stick around for, this other presentation. It turned out to be Davis Smith, and I sat there like humbled for the next 30 minutes. And, Davis is a incredible entrepreneur, humanitarian, he's an adventurer, he's an investor, he's a community leader. In many ways, I feel like you're even, on the world stage. You're doing things you're having an impact and doing things that go, deep in your backyard and deep across the world. And so it's just incredible what you're able to do. And I think that, it shows what people can do. And so in many ways, it's just very inspirational, and it's great to have you here. And then just kind of like leading a little more into it, you've taken, as I think you probably do with many things, a very opportunistic, positive outlook on what's going on right now with the pandemic. And there's an article, if you guys haven't seen it, Forbes named Davis as like one of the best adapters to COVID, which, he can talk a little bit about what they're doing and kind of maybe what's coming next. But the one thing I think is just so incredible as like an example of the type of, influence and the type of like good that you do in the world is, you posted one thing for your friend Edgar in Peru about how tourism was going to be declining. And this is like week 1 of the pandemic, or maybe the first month. Tourism is declining. They rely on tourism. Davis said, if you want to donate $10, and here's the thing. I don't know what your final kind of fundraise was, but I mean, Davis, just with a social media post, gets this guy I think it was like $10,000. I mean, like, for a community in Peru that, I don't know if that's a normal or a good season for him in terms of like compensating or making up for what's maybe missing, but just an incredible impact that you're having everywhere, and particularly for the people that you're, that you engage with and that are in your sort of support circle. So anyway, incredible to have you here for the team, and just thank you. So
well, first of all, Patrick, thank you for having me. This is so nice. And talking about that first time we met, I watched him speak, and Patrick is being very humble. He hit it out of the park. In fact, I still remember what he said. There was like a part of his lecture that I actually steal and I use all the time now, which is about being a keeper of the flame. I don't know if you remember even talking about that, but you talked about being a keeper of the flame. And I absolutely love that. And I've used it extensively with my own team, talking about how each one of them needs to be a keeper of this flame. we're a benefit corporation. We're a business that's built around giving back. You know, we sell backpacks and jackets and tents and sleeping bags, other outdoor gear, but we're not even an outdoor company, really. We're a company that does good. We're a company that stands for certain values, and that gives us the flexibility to do a lot of different things in a very different way. And so, but you know, I'd love to just kind of have a conversation with all of you and learn what you're all learning. But maybe I can just hit briefly on the point that you made, Patrick, around this young man, Edgar. I know Patrick's heard this story, but I'll just share a very brief version of it, just so you have the full context. But in 2001, so I grew up in Latin America. I moved to Latin America when I was 4 years old. I moved to the Dominican Republic, and then lived there for a number of years, then moved to Puerto Rico for 5 years, lived in San Juan, and then moved to South America. So I spent all of my childhood in Latin America, and then a lot of my adult life. My last business was in Brazil. I've always, from the time I was a child, known how lucky I was. I didn't grow up in a wealthy home. You know, we had just enough, but not a lot. But I always had more opportunity than anyone else around me, simply because of where I'd been born. And I knew that I had a responsibility to use my life to find a way to help others. And so from the time I was a kid, like, that's what I thought about every single day. And, you know, when I was in college, I started looking at ways that I could make a difference in the world. And I found an internship in Peru. It was an unpaid internship working for a nonprofit, but it was just like, it was this perfect experience where I could go immerse myself in a part of the world that I loved, and to go serve and learn from others. And when I was there, I met a little shoe shining boy in Cusco, Peru, a boy that was 9 years old. And the highlight of my day every day was finding this little boy. And I'd bring him food, I'd bring him some of my lunch or dinner. And he was just the sweetest kid. And, you know, wasn't in school. He didn't learn how to, you know, he never learned how to write or read until later. And, you know, it was a really meaningful experience for me to get to know him. And my last night in Cusco, I found him sleeping on the street, and it was close to midnight. I woke him up and I asked him why he was there sleeping on the street. And he told me that someone had stolen his shoe shining kit. He was too afraid to go home. He told me his dad was an alcoholic, and he was afraid to see him. And he said his mom depended on him to help feed his family. And so I gave him the little bit of money that I had. It wasn't very much. And that night I could hardly sleep. I was just so worried about my little friend. And the next day I got on a bus to leave Cusco for the last time. I went around the main plaza, and as I did, I looked out the window and I saw this little boy, Edgar, and he was running next to this bus, waving goodbye to me. And he bought a big bag of candy with the money I'd given him, and he was selling the candy in the street. He was an entrepreneur, which I just love now. But it was on that bus that I made a commitment to myself that I was going to use my life to help kids like him. And I ended up back in school. I found a mentor, a man who was a philanthropist who had dedicated his life to alleviating poverty. And he had been a successful entrepreneur before, and he encouraged me to pursue entrepreneurship as a career path. He said, don't go, you know, I wanted to work for him. He's like, don't work for me, don't work for a nonprofit. Go into business, become an entrepreneur, and you're going to find your own way of making your path. You're going to find a way of doing good. And so I spent 10 years building a couple different businesses, and decided I was ready to go pursue that commitment, that path. And so I decided to build this business about giving back. And about a year or two into the business, I told the story of Edgar so many times and how he was an inspiration to me to look for a way to help others. And I've thought of Edgar every day since 2001. I decided I needed to go back to Peru. I'd never been back since 2001. And I said I wanted to go find this boy. And so I went back, and I went into Cusco, and I actually had one picture of him, and I had a little 11 or 13-second video of him running next to this bus waving goodbye to me. And so with that, I went into this main plaza, and I started asking everyone I could find if they knew someone named Edgar, and I showed the picture. And within a few minutes, there was a crowd of people, like 60 people big, that gathered around me, and that someone in the back just said, hey, I know who that is. It's one of my best friends. And this kid in the back was like selling artwork He had all his artwork in his arms that he was selling in the streets. And he gave me a phone number. We called this number on a payphone, and Edgar answered the phone. And it was like such an emotional moment for me. And we spent an entire day together. He took me to his little home. He wanted to show me this home that he'd built. And as we made our way up there, he told me a story that his mom had died giving birth to his younger brother, who he's raising. Edgar was 11 years old at the time. And then his dad died of alcohol abuse when he was 13. So he was orphaned as a 13-year-old. So he raised his younger siblings. When we got to his house, it was a house made of mud. And it had a hole in the ground for the toilet. And there was a part of me that was just so discouraged to see how he was living. But there was this other part of me that was like bursting with pride, because he was so proud to show me this house that he'd made, and like the life that he had, that he'd done all himself. And so we talked about what his dreams were. And he told me, I was like, if you could do anything, what would you want to do? And he talked about wanting to be a tour guide. He's like, I've learned some English on, working with tourists every day in the streets. And I know Cusco better than anyone. Like, I've grown up walking these streets. And so he joined a program. We found a 3-year program where he's learning to be a tour guide, and he graduates this year. And I was super excited to go back. I was going to go back to his graduation. And then COVID happened, and the program has been canceled until further notice. He's not going to officially graduate. He can't be an official tour guide until this is done. And it was disappointing, but it was about a month or 3 weeks into COVID that I got a message from him on Facebook that was desperate. And he just said, I am in big trouble. I have no way to earn money. There's no tourism. I can't go in the streets. We're in complete lockdown. I'm trying to support my younger siblings. He has his own child now. He's married with a little boy. And he's like, we can't even eat. Like, we have nothing to fall back on. And I went to bed that night just like really concerned about what I wanted to do. And I didn't want to be in a situation where I was sending him money all the time. And so I was trying to think of a solution. And that night I was, kind of restless, thinking about it at night while I was like half asleep, half awake. And at 5 a.m, I came up with this idea. And the idea was that he could offer a walking tour of Cusco. Everyone wants to see Cusco, this magical city of the Incas near Machu Picchu. And I thought, if he offered like a 30-minute walking tour for $10, I bet I could get my friends and people in my network to go support him. And so, yeah, we raised, in a few days, we raised $10,000, and he makes about $2,000, $2,500 a year selling stuff in the street. And so this has been life-changing for him. We opened up a little bank account, a business bank account. We set some rules and some parameters around how we were going to use the money. And, while they're still in lockdown, he's taking a small monthly salary, enough to get by, and the rest of the money is there. And we're finding some short-term ways to help. So they eat guinea pigs there. It's an interest they have for thousands of years. And so he bought 40 guinea pigs, 10 male, 30 female, and he's actually breeding them and selling guinea pigs to neighbors. He bought some chickens, and he's, using the eggs and selling the eggs.
Right.
And then we're going to set up a little, he's going to have his own tourism business as soon as things get back to normal. But I think it's such a great example for me of wanting to make a difference, dedicating. Like, I spent 20 years thinking of this boy, 19 years. And there were times where I was really discouraged because I felt like I'm not completing this mission. I haven't been able to do what I want to do. And, but for me, it was just confirmation that when you set your mind to something and you're committed to a goal, that you're going to find a way to do it. And for me, it was just one person. It was just this one boy that I met, and it's like one of the most fulfilling things in my entire life. Really, it sounds silly, but just one person, but it's something that means a lot to me. And so
that's incredible, just incredible. And I feel like you inspire a lot of this stuff. But then for everybody who doesn't know Cotopaxi, and maybe some people know a little bit, but you're doing this on a global stage as well, and with your company and being a B Corp. But one of the questions when I asked my team if they had someone who came from Chloe, who's on here, is you guys talk about the what you guys are doing with Cotopaxi, both standard pre-pandemic and where the benefits of your business are going. And then if you can also go to like what's going on now with the pandemic and what Cotopaxi is doing to both as a business do well, but also to do good for everybody.
Yeah. So when I started Cotopaxi, I really wanted to build something that wasn't just giving back on the side, on the like something on the periphery, an afterthought. I wanted to build the mission into everything that we did. And so the give back is we give away a percentage of all of our sales, but we also we go deep in our supply chain and find ways to have impact. We went to Bolivia, a place where I used to live. Went to a community that I lived in that makes about $200 a year. They live in extreme poverty, and I'd always wanted to go back and find a way to make a difference. And we started buying llama wool from these communities and making, different products. The socks I'm wearing right now are Cotopaxi socks. They're like kind of like you buy merino wool hiking socks, but these are made of llama wool from this little community in Bolivia where I used to live, right? So, we've used our supply chain to have an impact. When you order something from our website, you get a handwritten thank you card that's written by a refugee. It's their very first job when they're resettled to the United States, to Utah, where we live. They're learning English, so they write the thank you card in their native language. And we created a job club where our team volunteers and teaches this team how to create a resume, how to do a job interview, how to follow up after the job interview, these basic skills they need to get started. And so we've had over 100 refugees participate in this program with their first job, and they can make pretty good money. It's been a really fun program. One of my favorite success stories is a brother and sister that were card writers for us. Some of our very first card writers, and they were teenagers, 17 and 19. They came to Utah as 6 siblings. They'd been orphaned. Their parents had died in Congo. They walked from Congo to Uganda. The oldest was 13 years old, the youngest 4. They drank out of rivers. They ate food that they could find on the ground. And then after 3.5 years in a refugee camp, they were sent to Salt Lake. And I met them in their first year here. So they were still learning English, and they were amazing. And Jolly, the one that was 17, is now a senior at the University of Utah, has a full scholarship, is studying entrepreneurship. And, it's so fun. I'm like a mentor to her. We meet together, we talk about business, and her whole family is just this amazing family. They want to be doctors and lawyers. And it's amazing to see this family that came from such a difficult circumstance and has been able to make just a wonderful life here in Salt Lake. So that's kind of the history of the business, as far as like how we generally look to do good. Last year we had about $1 million that we committed towards social impact. And then so with COVID, this was tricky, right? Like 50% of our revenue got turned off overnight in March. Our retail stores closed. REI and the other outdoor retailers that we sell through, 500 other retailers, all closed. Our corporate sales, we sell a lot of bags and jackets to teams, companies, events. Those were all like shut down. So I think the first response might be like, hey, this year we're not going to be able to give as much. And instead, it felt like if there's a time we need to give, this is the year to do it. And we're going to have to get really creative on how to do it. And so we started brainstorming as a team. I'd read this great article in Forbes that was about 3 different types of CEOs and how they were responding to COVID in the first week or so of this time. And they interviewed 29 CEOs. They recorded the interviews, and then they broke them down into these 3 categories. There was the fear-focused CEO, which was someone that was they used the word COVID, coronavirus, Donald Trump, and government like 7 times more than the other CEOs. They consumed like 5 times more media content. They were just constantly consuming and like riling themselves up on this fear of what was happening. Then there was the unfocused CEO, which is a CEO that was really hadn't made any changes, wasn't adapting, was just kind of saying, I'm going to wait and see what happens and adapt, down the road. Interestingly, they used the word vacation like 6 times more than any other CEO. And then the strategy-focused CEO was the most inspiring CEO to me. It was the CEO that was using words like opportunity and buy and growth and learning. And they were like 7 times more likely to have made changes in their business, product, or service. And when I read this, honestly, I saw a lot of myself in the fear-focused CEO, and I didn't like it. I did see myself in the strategy-focused CEO a little bit, but I made a decision that day that I was going to be the strategy-focused CEO. And I sent the article to my whole team, and I challenged everyone to read it, and that we were going to have an all-hands meeting the next day. And we had a discussion as a team about whether we were being the fear-focused, unfocused, or strategy-focused associate, or manager, or director, or VP. And as a team, we made a decision that we were going to be strategy-focused. We created a spreadsheet with where we came up with 100 different ideas that were either cost-cutting, brand building, revenue driving, or giving back. And so we, in the last 4 months, we've raised about $400,000 for COVID response for refugees primarily, or for people in our local community in need. So it's been really, really fun and fulfilling to see that come together.
That's awesome, man. I mean, I love how humble you are, in the sense that you say, like, you were fear focused and switched to strategy focused, but everything you're doing from an outside perspective just seems like classic David Smith. Like, I feel like you were like thinking about the face mask, like you guys are doing the thing now for a face mask for everyone in Utah. And so you partnered with the state, and I feel like there's, like, in my mind, I'm thinking that you're probably looking at the marketplace and saying, well, there's 49 other states. How can we get a few more to buy face masks for every citizen? But you're the things that you're doing on the surface level seem like they're in your nature already, and that you were one of the people I see being very vocal in the first few weeks about, like, that, this is not a time to be. I feel like you're posting like this, everyone's panicking, and you're nervous about the repercussions of shutting down the economy. And at the same time, I feel like you posted a little bit about you used the hashtag COVID opportunity. And I mean, that really resonated with me when I saw it, and I looked at it too, and I said, okay, well, how do we turn this into a positive, and how do we make this a growth opportunity for us? And we have, I mean, you've had to replace 50% of your revenue. I mean, we've replaced 60 so far, and it's continuing to go.
Wow.
And I mean, the team that's on here right now, I mean, they've all been through, we've like learned new things, trained, implemented. I mean, it's been grueling in terms of the, doing your day-to-day, plus taking on something new, plus getting, and sort of taking it to scale. But yeah, I mean, and it's fantastic. But I want to ask maybe one more question, and then we can hand it off to some people. So I know at least a couple of people asked, you're somebody, and like even right now, you're on a hike with your family or a camping trip with your family. Like, life seems good. Like, you seem uninterrupted in a way where you're still at peace. But like, how do you, I guess, has anything changed for you day to day? What's changed? And also, like, how do you manage yourself and your time in a way? I mean, you've got all the same responsibilities. Everybody's juggling all these things. I feel like people are on edge a little bit because there is this other, maybe multiple other things weighing down and affecting everybody. Particularly, like, news intake seems like one where you have to kind of put the filter on. But how are you handling it now? And then just how do you do it? How do you do it all? I know you're not Superman, but like, how do you do it?
That's a really nice question, and I'm still trying to learn and figure it out as well. I mean, this has been a really challenging time to figure out how to balance. The nice thing is that, even though I think the first couple months I was working way more than I was previous to COVID, but I was at home, right? So I was having breakfast, lunch, and dinner with my family, with my kids, and my wife, which was really, really cool and unique. And I wasn't traveling as much. But one thing I realized is that my team, just like I was working more hours, even though they weren't in the office. They were so dedicated to what we were working on our mission. And so we had to find ways to balance. And some of the vacations that people had planned for the summer, they didn't end up taking. And so we had to get creative around how do we balance this and how do we make sure that people are staying mentally healthy. And so we started having conversations about that. And I was reaching out to individuals on our team every day, asking them how they're doing and if there were, things that we could do to help them, and just trying to listen and learn. And we started doing a few things that were really helpful, which is, every Monday morning we started doing a morning hike. So the whole team virtually everyone would dial into Zoom and we'd go on a little hike wherever you were. A lot of people just walking around their block or taking their dog on a walk, but we were all together on Zoom. And it was really mentally healthy, you know, to start the week off together, but not even talking about work, looking at people's dogs and showing like our favorite little hike or where we were at or whatever. And it was pretty awesome. Then we started doing every other Friday we gave off because we realized people were working so much. We wanted them to take a long weekend to get outside and to go spend time with their families or whatever. So that was some other thing. But we've always cared a lot about finding balance in our work. And we know that we're going to do the best work when we're feeling that balance in our lives. I will say, like, I recognize that I'm a better CEO today than I was 5 months ago. And it's because, and I've learned some great lessons, the things that I'm going to do different and better moving forward. You know, my communication's a lot more deliberate and intentional and structured than it was before. You know, we moved my weekly executive meeting to every single day for the first 3 months. We'd do it at 8:30 in the morning. And I started putting together an agenda, which is something I never felt I'm very good at. I felt like I'm not a very structured person. I didn't really like agendas. I just wanted to show up in the meeting and talk about whatever I wanted to talk about. But I found that I needed an agenda. And so I started putting together an agenda, and I've never missed a day since putting together an agenda for this meeting. And all of a sudden in the entire company, we've implemented this policy around, we don't hold a meeting without an agenda, because I just found how much more productive we are. And my communication is just so much clearer. And I'm communicating more frequently with my team, and, you know, the all hands team, which we meet, you know, a couple times a month, and then I do regular communication on Slack with them. So anyway, but I'd love to hear, Patrick, like, I'd love to hear what you've learned as a leader in this time, and also your team. Like, what have you guys learned during this time? Like, what are the things that you are going to do differently after this that you maybe weren't doing before?
Yeah, I mean, and guys, if anybody wants to unmute or chat themselves, raise their hand to jump in, please do. But I can echo what you said, Davis. I mean, I was on cruise control to a degree before this. I mean, things were, you know, the economy was good, things were steady, everything seemed like, you know, it predictable. And then the rug got pulled out from under us. I mean, most of our clients were gyms. A large base of our customers were gyms. And, you know, the first weekend of the pandemic, I knew it. I'm like, if there's one category that's going to really, really hurt, it's gyms. And thankfully, some of our gyms had made me go and work out in their facilities prior to this. So I knew that they were stuffing maximum people into a small space. And so, I mean, I just saw it. And I think they're still going to be in a tough place, and we're still helping them, and we're doing a lot for our existing customer base. But the biggest thing that has happened for me that's changed is my performance level has never been higher. I mean, just in terms of I've been craving this level of engagement, and I was going to come back to Philadelphia for the summer to be around entrepreneurs and to get back in the circuit, so to speak, and just to get a little more, kind of a little more of that flame under my butt. But like really wanted to get myself dialed up to perform better, and the pandemic did it. Now I don't think there's any going back for me either. You know, I mean, I've seen. I said we were down. We had to replace 60% of our revenue. We've done it. I mean, we've actually been able to replace so many customers in such a short period of time. And while there's challenges and things that we're facing as part of it, I mean, they're healthy. They're healthy challenges, and it just shows what we were capable of this entire time. And here we go. We've got a couple of questions coming in here. Good. We got one piece of feedback from Lauren Groff. Lauren, do you want to jump in and talk about what you guys have picked up? You're welcome to unmute.
Patrick, actually, even before that, Tim from 97 Display had a question, and I given him a chance to say his piece. So, Tim, you should be good to go.
Hey, great stories. Fantastic. On another call, you can give me some Spanish advice, because I'm trying to gain fluency, but it's hard when I'm not integrated into a Spanish-speaking culture.
Yeah.
But also, I just bought 2 fanny packs off your website. They're blown away by your product. So,
yeah.
My question for you today is, as a CEO and a leader of people, how do you balance knowing what you're good at and playing to strengths while serving in the trenches and knowing and doing what needs to be done. Have you found, like, in terms of knowing when to delegate and then when to do it yourself, have you been able to strike a balance there, or have a good
Yeah, I know. Really nice question. You know, I think I don't think I've always been really great at this. I definitely am not a micromanager. It's not in me. I think Patrick is probably the same way. I think delegating is something that comes naturally, but I think one thing I wasn't great at in the beginning was actually bringing great people around me. My very first business, I remember thinking I could probably do everyone's job in this company at least as good as they could. And it wasn't that I was really talented. It was just that I didn't do a great job hiring, honestly. You know, I've learned over the years, like, how to build a better team. And, you know, the team that we have now, frankly, I could never do their jobs. I couldn't. They're so good at what they do that it's really easy for me to feel confidence in handing things over to them. You know, I think there is something about, like, I know what my strengths are, and I know, like, my strengths are around, like, fundraising and, you know, communicating the vision of this brand to customers and to potential hires and to our team and motivating people. Maybe some of the things I wasn't good at were, like, the day-to-day, like the meeting agendas, those kind of things. And honestly, there was a time, quite a while, where I kind of thought, hey, I'm just not that good at those things, and I'm just going to focus on what I'm really good at, and let the rest of the team around me kind of do the rest. And I hired a CEO coach about maybe 8 months ago. Game changer for me. There were stories I had in my head that were not serving me well, and there were stories about what I wasn't good at. And I think all of us have those in our heads, you know, at different times. I'm sure, you know, Tim, you do as well, whereas you think, hey, I know what my talents are, and maybe I'm not good at these other things. And I went from thinking, you know, I just need to spend all my time focusing on what I'm really good at and forget the other things that I'm not good at. And I've tried to identify little by little things that I thought I wasn't very good at, and putting a little bit of effort behind them. And it's amazing what the difference that it's made for me in my ability to lead. And so my advice is, like, you should focus a lot on what you're good at and double down on those strengths, but you should also always be working on those areas of weakness and get someone to coach you. It doesn't have to be like an executive coach. It can be a spouse. It can be a close coworker. And you can just vocalize, hey, I've noticed that this is something that I'm not very good at. I want to do better, and this is something I'm going to make an effort around. Will you hold me accountable to it? So hopefully that answers your question.
Nice.
And then we've got Lauren Groff, who wanted to maybe, you know, partake and ask a question. Lauren, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself here in a second.
Oh, there we go. Now I can talk. No, yeah, the first comment was just about, you know, going back to the question of what'd you learn during this? And we definitely saw that the good culture was challenged, but definitely proven. And, you know, even the culture fits, you know, the in-house, you know, in the business sort of that, you know, people easily cover for each other or hide, you know, underperforming, like it glared out, and we had one B player and we let him go, but everyone else is, like, performing better. I know in the long term, I don't anticipate the happiness factor staying high if we have to all stay remote, but yeah, that was one thing that we definitely saw. I mean, we're, you know, spreading the message about what we've learned about it too. I mean, it's not our business, but, you know, other business owners are, you know, seeing the same sort of stuff and just trying to get the message out.
I love that. Yeah, it's so important to make sure the whole team is on the same page, right? I mean, we had to let a couple people go during this time as well, where, you know, in some ways it was like it's probably a decision we should have made sooner. This kind of forced our hand. It was like, hey, we knew we had to do this, but now there's no time to waste. You know, you have to act immediately and get everyone on the same page and make sure that everyone's aligned. So yeah, it's a great point.
Love it. Any folks from Nerdwise or other folks? I think maybe we've got And we got a good number of folks on here. Anybody with another question? If not, Kevin O'Neill, I know I can always call on you. Anyone else want to?
I can't see on my phone for some reason, I can't see the chat very easily, but I think I saw one pop up for a second that said, where did the name come from?
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, the Cotopaxi name, what do they call it? The origin story. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a quick one, but growing up, some of my childhood and teenage years in Ecuador, I was in Quito, the capital, and there's volcanoes that surround this capital city. There's one that's just like, it's right on the equator, but it's permanently snow-capped. So it's a glacier, and it's an active volcano. So it still erupts, and it's called Cotopaxi. It's almost 20,000 feet above sea level. So it's very, very high. And I used to go backpacking there with my dad. It was the first place I saw llamas in the wild, was around the base of this volcano. And as I thought of names for this brand, that was going to be all about giving back and getting people in the outdoors and adventure, that name came to me. It was the name of the school I went to when I lived there as well. So the name had a lot of meaning to me, and was connected back to these roots that I had. And so yeah, that's where the name comes from.
Was the domain available when you went to get it?
No, in fact, interestingly, a teacher from the school, Academia Cotopaxi, where I went to school, owned the domain, but he wasn't doing anything with it. He was just kind of sitting on it. And I sent him an email and said, hey, I see that you own this domain. And he's like, yeah, I'm actually a teacher at the school. And I'm like, oh yeah, I went to that school as a kid. And this name means a lot to me. And I'm like, what are you doing with the domain? And he's like, nothing, but I had some ideas for it at some point. And anyway, in chatting, he was open to selling it, and I bought it from him. It wasn't cheap, but it wasn't that expensive either. The name didn't mean anything to most people. So it wasn't like a high price domain.
So I love domain, just like asking, I'm curious, it's a great domain, but it's funny. I mean, when David spoke the first time, I remember everything about your talk because I was white in the face because I presented before you, not if I had to speak after you, then I wouldn't have said anything worth remembering. But Davis had baby.com, or maybe it's baby.br for Brazil, which they had to in kind of like a magic trick, like Indiana Jones, I feel like raise a ton of money and secure a domain for like $500,000. Was that how much that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, that was an expensive domain. But yeah, we kind of finagled a way to get the domain, and found some financial backers that really believed in what we were going to build, and they ended up helping us get the money to buy it. So yeah, there's like a deeper story there that's really fun and funny. But yeah, that's the cool thing is though, like entrepreneurs and like startups, that's what it's all about. It's like finding creative solutions with like very limited resources, right? So yeah, you guys are experts with that, I'm sure.
Yeah. We got one more asking to be unmuted, and it's James Powell, who is part of Team Nerdwise here, running under his wife's name, Tina. But James, I think you're unmuted if you want to jump in.
All right, thanks, Pat. Davis, what a cool story, man. It's so touching, and I had my daughter in here. She just wanted me to play some songs on YouTube for her, but I told her no, that I was on this call. So I just wanted to jump in. She's two. I got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Awesome.
And thank you. I appreciate that. It's definitely a different world. I've been working ever since I graduated college in customer service, but I was working for somebody. And when I had the opportunity to join Nerdwise, I was ready for an adventure, and I took that adventure, and it's going on 3 years now. And looking back on it, it's been an experience that I wouldn't give back. It's almost like I've got some friends that have never gone away to college, and I said, you got to go away. You got to take that adventure to figure out yourself, figure out what you like, just do that adventure. So now I'm here with my wife, my kids at home, and we're ready for this adventure. just the conversation, the experience that you're sharing with your life it's touching, man. Congratulations, and continue doing what you're doing, because
Hey, yeah, thanks a lot. I appreciate that. I love what you said about before joining Nerdwise, that you were just feeling like you worked for somebody. But the cool thing about startups and like working for someone like Patrick is like you are a builder. Like you are building something. You are a creator. And one of my favorite quotes is by a man named Dieter Uchtdorf. And he says, "The desire to create is one of the deepest yearnings of the human soul." And it is so true. Like all of us want to create. It might be music, it might be art, it might be cooking, it might be creating a business. But there's something really cool about joining a startup and being a creator and a builder, building something that didn't exist before. And it's amazing how fulfilling that can be. So yeah, thanks for the comment.
Awesome. Anybody? Yeah.
Chloe from Team Nerdwise, who's got a question that she's eager to ask. Chloe, the floor is yours.
Hey, Davis. It's nice to meet you today, and it's very cool to hear from you. I actually have a couple questions. The first one's kind of silly, but I'd like to know if you're a Cougars fan since you went to BYU.
Yeah, I am a Cougars fan.
I personally am a Boise State Broncos girl. I grew up in Idaho, so I'm jealous.
So
I'm in
fun.
Texas right now. I'm like jealous that you're in the mountains because I miss being able to go and do that. But
yeah, Idaho's amazing. Yeah,
super cool place. Yeah. So really my question for you though is you obviously seem like a very solid and great leader. I personally believe that great leaders glean their inspiration from other great leaders. So I want to know who your mentors are and who your role models are that maybe have helped shape you into the leader that you are today.
Yeah, great question. One of my first and early mentors was a man named Steve Gibson, who I mentioned earlier, who had a nonprofit in the Philippines where he taught entrepreneurship to help pull people out of poverty. And he was the one that put me on this path to be an entrepreneur. I never would have thought of being an entrepreneur before talking to him. I just never saw that in myself. And he gave me the confidence to go do it. Another mentor of mine is a guy named Jeremy Andrus, who's become a close friend of mine, and he's on our board. And he's an entrepreneur and a business builder himself, but he's maybe a few steps ahead of me as far as his success. Has had a couple very big exits, and but that's not what really interests me about him. It's not the success he's had as a business leader; it's the person that he is. I remember the day that he exited his last business. He wasn't even telling people publicly that they'd had this event, but I knew about it the day that it happened. And then that night, I saw him posting on Instagram that he and his wife and his kids were all serving at a soup kitchen. And it's like, this guy just made a lot of money, and he's out at a soup kitchen. Like, he's not out celebrating and eating some fancy dinner, which nothing wrong with eating a fancy dinner. You know, we all like to go out, eat out, but like his life was more than just money. And I really like that. And then two others, Christine Day, who has become a close friend and mentor. She's the former CEO of Lululemon, one of the most amazing leaders that I've ever met. And so she's an investor in Cotopaxi, and just someone I really admire and look up to. And then recently, a woman named Wendy Yang, who just joined our board just recently, but she's the president of two brands, Tiva, the sandal company, and Hoka, which is like a running shoe brand. And she is absolutely a rock star. And she just joined our board. I'm like so pumped to get to know her better and to learn more from her. But I've got to know her over the last year and have just really enjoyed it. So anyway, those are some of my favorite mentors.
I love that. And I mean, I think just the same. It's one of those things, you know. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. It's like that whole thing around your influences, and I mean that's actually why I needed this, and I wanted to bring this in for the team here, is because I feel like we all need this right now. We all need to bring in positive, you know, the people. Like, I mean, whether it be calling home or calling that old friend or that person that you look up to and bringing if there's an opportunity in COVID, not to say you're shedding the people that aren't those influences, but you really can look out at who are the most positive influences that you want to bring back into your life. And I think this is a great opportunity. I mean, right now you've inspired 15 people, 16, 17 people in some way, shape, or form. Some are buying fanny packs, and some are, going to talk about you around the dinner table tonight. And it's great, man. I'm glad. Thanks for doing that. Are there any other questions from the group? Anybody want to jump in here? One more, one or two more for Davis? Anyone?
I got one question, Davis. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Michael Coop. I actually partnered with Patrick maybe 6 years ago on this endeavor, and I know a lot more today I did at the beginning of the entrepreneurial journey, and I could probably go back and give myself some helpful wisdom nuggets. If you could do the same for yourself when you started off on your entrepreneurial journey, maybe 20 or 30 years ago, what pieces of advice would you give yourself as you started off on that journey? Give yourself maybe a competitive advantage, look for the forward, ability.
Yeah. That's a really good one. I think one of the things I've learned is how important, and I've always valued this, but I think I've really learned better how to do it, which is how to invest in people. That is everything. That is your success as an entrepreneur is 100% based on how the people around you, because you can't do it by yourself, no matter how big your vision is. And so, making sure that you get to know people before you bring them on your team. And when you bring them on, I used to never do, so my last business, my first two businesses I did with my cousin, we were co-CEOs. And, this is one of the sad probably the saddest thing in my life, but that relationship fell apart. And, he gave me some feedback that he just said that, I wasn't very good at holding people accountable. And, he was right. I wasn't very good at that. I cared deeply about people, but I think in my desire to be a kind, nice person, I wasn't a great boss because I didn't hold people accountable. And so I've had to learn that. And, in this business, I've spent a lot more time investing in one-on-ones and giving feedback. There's a great book that maybe some of you have read, but called Radical Candor. We read it as a team. I love it. It has transformed me as a person, as a leader, as a husband. But it's really around the ability to give feedback is based on how much people know you care about them. If they know that you care about them, that you love them, that I tell my team I love them, and they know I do. And so when I tell my COO or my CMO, hey, this is something that I'm seeing that I want you to work on, they know where it's coming from. And that matters so much. But when you care for someone, but you're not willing to give them hard feedback, it's ruinous empathy. It's not kind. And so that's something that I've had to learn. And that's the feedback that's probably the number one feedback I'd give myself is learning to have the courage to give that feedback, and you can still care for someone and expect, a lot out of them.
Wow.
I love that. Yeah, I've always been told that sometimes your character is judged not by the easy conversations, but the difficult ones that you're willing to have. And that policing bridge of compassion and empathy back and forth is pivotal to growing that bond stronger and making people better all around you. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think you're right. People want feedback. People want to grow. And when you're willing to give that to them, it means a lot to them. I was surprised at how much it meant to people that I was willing to talk to them about some of the things that they could work on. So, yeah.
Excellent.
Awesome. That was awesome. I almost want to stop at that because that's such a powerful piece to end on. If anybody has anything better than that they can ask, that was really powerful, Davis. If anybody wants to jump in with one more, they can. Davis, if there's anything that you want to wrap up with, please do. But I just want to say, again, thank you so much, man. This is incredible that you took time away from your camping trip with your family to meet with us, and just super grateful.
Well, yeah, I mean, I really appreciate it. I wish, please invite me back when you do this again with David Lipscomb. I want to hear his words of wisdom. You got a legend on the call here. So I want to get invited back. If I could just maybe wrap up with one thought, which is, I talked about this boy, now a young man named Edgar, and how much it shaped me. And my challenge to each of you is to ask yourselves, who is your Edgar? Who is that person or that thing that every single day can drive you to look beyond yourself? Because life it's so much more fulfilling when it's focused on somebody else and when it's focused on giving. And so it's really easy to get pulled in, especially during the COVID time where we can't interact with others and we can just be so absorbed with our own challenges. And I would just challenge each of you to think about who that might be. And if you feel like you have one, awesome. Find a way to like make a difference. And if you feel like you don't quite have that person yet, no big deal. Like you have a lot of time to figure that out, but make that a goal, maybe this year, to find that way that you can lift someone else. So yeah, thanks again, Patrick, for having me. This was awesome. I really enjoyed it.
Too good, man. No, thanks, Davis. Round of applause, and just all around awesome, man. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Tell Aislinn and everybody I send my best. I'm running. I'm jumping. I'm everything. I'm all mobile again.
We're so glad. We're so glad you're not permanently handicapped. Seriously.
All
right.
Beautiful.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
okay.
man. Cheers.
Bye.